The Light We Built. Chapter 4. Where the Ground Begins. Morning began quietly above the Maple Street diner. The summer sun had already found the window above the dining room table, laying a warm square of light across the maple boards Noah had built years earlier. The building itself seemed to wake slowly. First, the low hum of the refrigerator downstairs, then the faint clatter of dishes as Margaret began moving through the kitchen. Coffee soon followed. Oscar sat in one of the chairs, swinging his feet while he waited. "Are we late?" he asked. Margaret glanced at the clock and smiled faintly. "No," she said, "we're early." Jack stood near the window, looking out toward Maple Street. Across the road, the Dawson family had just stepped out of their car. Pete closed the driver's door while Georgia hopped down from the back seat. Virginia was already halfway up the sidewalk. Lois paused beside the car, brushing a curl away from Caroline's face before the two of them followed the others toward the diner. Caroline lingered a moment longer beside the car. Jack stepped away from the window. Before anyone noticed, he had been watching. Behind him, Noah picked up his cap from the table. "Well," he said, "we might as well start the day." The diner filled quickly that morning. Summer brought travelers through town more often, and the tables filled with the steady rhythm Margaret knew by heart. Coffee poured, plates carried, chairs sliding against the floor as people came and went. Caroline moved easily behind the counter beside Margaret. At some point over the past few weeks, Margaret had stopped telling her where things were kept. Caroline carried plates, cleared tables, and refilled coffee cups with quiet efficiency. Jack noticed. He tried not to, but he did. Across the room, Pete and Noah sat in a booth near the window with 2 coffee mugs and a folded sheet of paper spread across the table. On the paper were several rough rectangles drawn behind the square outline of the diner. Margaret set a fresh pot of coffee between them. "You two planning to talk about that all morning?" she asked. Pete glanced down at the drawing. "Well," he said calmly, "we could go look at the ground instead." Noah smiled slightly. "That might help." The ground behind the diner stretched wider than it looked from the kitchen window. The grass still held a little dew when Noah and Pete stepped out into the yard after breakfast. Jack followed them a few paces behind while Oscar lingered near the back steps. Pete stopped halfway across the open space and turned slowly. "Well," he said. Noah looked out across the yard. From this side, the diner seemed taller. The brick wall rose above them, the kitchen window open just enough that the smell of bacon drifted out into the warm morning air. Pete pointed with his coffee mug. First cottage could go there. He walked several paces farther. Second one there. Another pause. And if you ever got ambitious, he nodded toward the trees at the back of the property. Maybe a third down there. Jack studied the ground thoughtfully. "You'd need a lane." Pete glanced at him with approval. "Gravel?" Jack nodded. Packed dirt would wash out. Pete clapped him lightly on the shoulder. "You're hired." Oscar had wandered halfway across the yard, staring at the open ground as if he could already see the buildings there. "Will people stay in them?" he asked. "That's the idea," Noah said. Oscar nodded thoughtfully. Behind them, the back door opened, and Caroline stepped outside carrying a tray. "Breakfast," she called. Oscar ran back toward the steps immediately. Pete watched him go. "Well," he said, "looks like the hospitality committee has arrived." Noah took one last look across the open ground. For years, it had simply been yard. Now it felt like something waiting. Sunday mornings came slower than the rest of the week. The diner stayed closed until afternoon, and the quiet inside the building felt unusual. By mid-morning, both families were walking the short distance toward the church at the edge of town. The building sat beneath tall summer trees, its white siding bright in the sunlight. A narrow steeple rose above the roofline, and the open doors welcomed the slow stream of people moving up the path. Inside, the sanctuary smelled faintly of polished wood and old hymnals. Rows of wooden pews faced the modest pulpit at the front of the room. Sunlight passed through the tall stained glass windows along the walls, casting soft patches of colored light across the benches and floor. The congregation settled in quietly. Margaret and Noah sat together near the middle. The Dawson family filled the pew ahead of them. The service passed the way it often did, hymns rising together, quiet prayers, the steady voice of the pastor carrying through the warm air. Afterward, the younger members of the congregation drifted toward a smaller classroom at the back of the building for youth Sunday school. Jack took a seat near the back of the room, while Oscar settled beside him. Across the room, Caroline sat near the window. When the teacher opened the Bible at the front of the room, sunlight from the stained glass window fell across the open pages beside her. A patch of red and gold light rested across the thin paper. The teacher began to read. "Love is patient," he said. "Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud." The room grew quiet. "It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered." Jack hadn't been paying much attention at first, but somewhere in the middle of the passage, he noticed Caroline listening very carefully. Not the polite listening people used in church, the kind where someone was thinking about the words. The teacher finished the reading. "Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things." He closed the Bible gently. "Does anyone have a favorite verse?" For a moment, no one spoke. Then Caroline raised her hand slightly. "This one," she said. The teacher smiled. "What do you like about it?" Caroline thought for a moment. "I like that it talks about love being something you do," she said quietly. "Not just something you say." The teacher nodded. "That's a very good way to understand it." The lesson moved on after that, but Jack found himself thinking about what she had said. Outside the church, the bright summer sun warmed the steps. People stood in small groups talking, while children ran across the grass. Jack stepped down from the doorway and found Caroline standing near the edge of the path, watching Georgia chase Virginia across the yard. "You really like that passage," he said. Caroline looked up. "Which one?" "The one you mentioned." She smiled faintly. "First Corinthians." Jack nodded. "Why that one?" She thought for a moment. "I guess because it tells you what love is supposed to look like." She watched Georgia stumble briefly before catching herself again. "Patient," she said. "Kind, not selfish." Jack followed her gaze. "That sounds like a lot of work." Caroline laughed softly. "Maybe." Then she added thoughtfully, "There's a line near the end I like best." Jack looked at her. "What is it?" Caroline smiled. "Love never fails." For a moment, the sounds of the churchyard drifted around them, voices, laughter, leaves moving in the summer breeze. Jack nodded slowly. "I like that one," he said. Across the yard, Pete was already calling everyone toward the cars. Caroline turned toward the path. "Come on," she said. "They're waiting." Jack fell into step beside her. "I'll remember it," he said. Caroline smiled, not realizing how seriously he meant it. Later that afternoon, the diner sat quiet between meals. Jack stepped inside to escape the heat for a moment. Caroline sat in a booth near the window, with a small book open in front of her. Jack slid into the seat across from her. "What are you reading?" Caroline turned the book slightly. "Poetry." Jack studied the thin pages. "You read that for fun?" Caroline smiled. "Sometimes." She tapped the open page. "Poetry says something small that means something big." Jack nodded slowly. That seemed like a good reason. That evening, the ground behind the diner held the last warm light of the day. Noah stood in the grass beside Pete, while Jack paced off distances across the yard with a tape measure. Oscar watched from the back steps. The open space stretched behind them, quiet and waiting. "Right about here," Pete said, pointing toward the grass. Noah looked across the yard. 3 cottages could fit there, maybe 4 someday. Behind them, the diner windows glowed softly as Margaret and Caroline worked inside, finishing the evening dishes. Their voices drifted faintly through the open kitchen window. Noah smiled to himself. The ground behind the diner had been empty for years, but not for long.